You're not going to believe what just happened this week, my friends. I mean, truly, after years of holding her breath, after more than a decade of perfect composure, Carol Middleton, Kate's mother, finally, quietly, spoke her mind. Not a rumor passed in the dark, and certainly not a leak. It was her own gentle, measured reflection on what it's actually like to watch her daughter live under the immense weight of the crown. And let me tell you, for a woman whose entire reputation was built on her absolute silence, those few words caused a genuine stir at the palace. Because that's the way it always is, isn't it? When someone that quiet finally decides to use their voice, people don't just hear the words. They hear the sheer force it took to break the quiet in the first place. They lean in, they listen, and they start wondering why she chose now, in this delicate moment for the family, to let her guard drop. So today, dear friends, let's have a little talk. It's not gossip we're after, it's a true story about pride, about grace, and about what happens when a fiercely protective, private heart brushes up against the very hard public walls of an ancient institution. How did a loyal mother, once admired for her almost superhuman restraint, find herself at the very center of royal tension? And what, beneath all that glittering tradition, does her moment of honesty really reveal about the invisible, crushing rules of royal life? I always say, grab yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's quietly look at what really unfolded when Carol Middleton, the woman who provided the emotional bedrock for the future queen, broke her famous, formidable silence. The decades of quiet diplomacy. You probably remember Carol's reputation stretching back over the years. She was never a headline maker, honestly. She wasn't even a background presence, really, just a steady, perfectly composed figure. She had that classic British blend of neat hair, perfect manners, and an almost revolutionary gift for saying nothing. You know, for more than a decade, her entire public brand was based on privacy. That alone is a power move. She ran her party pieces business. She raised her children. She appeared at royal events precisely when she was expected to. And then she faded, perfectly and graciously, back into her quiet life. That's a discipline most people, even inside the palace, simply don't possess. When Kate married Prince William, Carol was suddenly thrown into a world most mothers can only imagine. A world of constant photo calls, suffocating protocol, and pressure so intense it could crack marble. And she managed it beautifully. There was never a public complaint, never a hint of needing the spotlight. She was always proud of her daughter, always polished, always standing just a respectful half-step back. You could practically feel the restraint in her posture, couldn't you? That slight, polite smile, the eyes that never, ever strayed from polite composure. It was an absolute masterclass in self-control. But here's the key thing about that kind of practiced silence. It holds this immense, almost majestic power right up until the very instant it breaks. That quiet composure was her armor, honestly, and it worked better than any security detail ever could. Over time, though, the Middletons were subtly repositioned by the media. Once they were hailed as the ordinary family, who brought this wonderful fresh air and stability into the monarchy, a genuine breath of fresh, relatable air. But then, you know, they slowly became at times symbols of this quiet class friction. The whispers started. They were deemed too close, too involved, or maybe just too visible for the ancient hierarchy's comfort. You remember those years, don't you? The endless side comments about influence and this bizarre concept of middle-class ambition meeting ancient hierarchy. It was all so simple, yet so loaded. Still, Carol never responded. Not once. She didn't bite back when her business faced genuine financial troubles during the pandemic. She didn't correct the constant tabloid fuel about her grandchildren's schooling or family holidays. She just stayed quiet. And that silence, my dear friends, didn't just become her armor, it became her currency. She was respected because she never asked for respect. The quiet burden of 2024. Then came 2024, the year that the royal facade, the perfect surface, truly trembled. When the Princess of Wales bravely revealed her cancer diagnosis, the entire tone of the public conversation shifted, literally overnight. The world stopped seeing just a princess, you know. They saw a daughter, a mother, a woman suddenly and terribly vulnerable. Carol's role changed too, but completely silently. She wasn't just the mother-in-law of the future king anymore. She became the mother of the nation's most loved woman in pain. That's a whole different kind of burden. It was a quiet elevation, yes, but also a quiet, heavy burden of responsibility. For months, while Kate focused entirely on her recovery away from the cameras, Carol reportedly stepped in. She became the steady anchor for that household, shielding the grandchildren and managing all the invisible corners of family life that even the most dedicated royal staff simply cannot touch. That is a duty only a mother can perform. Through all of that, even with the intense private worry, she stayed silent. She understood that the focus had to be entirely on her daughter's recovery, not on her own emotional struggle. But honesty, that kind of private pressure doesn't just evaporate. It builds minute by minute, hour by hour. And there's a quiet logic to when a person finally realizes enough. The unwritten rule of emotional mechanics. Somewhere between the late summer and early autumn of 2025, that tipping point finally arrived. Carol began to speak, not dramatically, thank goodness, not with accusations or tears, but with something far more powerful and disarming in that environment: honesty. She reflected on her daughter's massive challenges, the emotional toll that royal life takes on a person, and her own difficult adjustment to the constant blinding spotlight. She spoke as a human being, not as a symbol. And, as always, the press did what it does best. They took 10 perfectly calm, gentle sentences and built 100 shocking headlines. Words like shock, ripple, and revelation filled the page. Some reports, and remember my friends, always check more than one source, even suggested that she had delicately hinted at tension involving Queen Camilla. Others described her as simply being empathetic, a mother expressing worry and pride in beautifully equal measure. No one could quite agree on how far she had truly gone. And in the royal world, you know, that lack of agreement is half the problem, because near the crown, ambiguity is dynamite. Every tone, every pause, every offhand, carefully chosen remark instantly becomes a coded message for observers to dissect. Carol, the woman who had built her reputation on total, unwavering restraint, suddenly seemed to have stepped right onto the royal stage without the usual suffocating script. It felt revolutionary. Now, let's be fair about this. She didn't reveal secrets. She certainly didn't criticize anyone by name, but she did lift the curtain ever so slightly on the emotional mechanics of royal life. And for this family, that's almost an act of defiance. Behind closed doors, it's always been said that the Middletons offered Kate an emotional anchor, that one precious, quiet space where she could simply take off the crown and just be herself. That, by its very nature, can be deeply threatening inside a monarchy built on cold hierarchy and the suppression of emotion. There's a very good reason, friends, why so many royal mothers-in-law have either been made completely invisible or politely distant. The balance between the natural instinct of family and the rigid demands of the crown is impossibly fragile. Too much presence, and it feels like a terrible intrusion. Too little, and it feels like pure abandonment. So when Carol finally spoke, some people, the kind, empathetic ones like us, saw genuine love. Others, inside the old guard, saw pure disruption. And the truth, as always, lives somewhere in the complicated, messy middle. I'll tell you when I realized things had truly flipped, though. It wasn't during the interviews themselves. It was during the silence that followed. The quiet freeze. Within days, you know what didn't happen? Kensington Palace didn't issue clarifications. They made no statements. There were no helpful quotes from friends close to the couple. Absolutely nothing. Just this profound, heavy quiet. And in royal life, honestly, quiet can be the absolute loudest answer you can get. There's this unwritten rule about these moments, one that's been tested since Diana's difficult days. If the institution doesn't respond immediately, it means they are waiting. They're watching. They're waiting to see how the public breathes. They carefully measure the national mood before they commit to a reaction. In this case, the public didn't roar in protest. They simply sighed in understanding. They understood Carol's worry. They admired her staunch, fierce loyalty. But there was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift too. A realization that even the most disciplined, perfectly poised mother can sometimes step half an inch too far past that invisible boundary. Within a week, the headlines softened. They went from "Carol shocks royal circles" to Carol Middleton, a mother's love under pressure. But the lesson, the moral, I suppose, was already taught, already absorbed. Royal grace, my friends, depends entirely on distance. It is this invisible, necessary barrier that separates simple empathy from what is perceived as undue influence. Carol had, perhaps without even realizing the true weight of her actions, brushed right up against that line. Now, here is the deep, quiet irony of the entire situation. This wasn't rebellion. It was protection. Pure, human, maternal protection. She spoke because she's a mother first and foremost, and she's human. Because watching your daughter bear that terrifying weight, day after day, while the whole world speculates on her health and happiness, must feel absolutely unbearable. But in the monarchy, motive doesn't actually matter as much as timing. And timing, as we all know, is everything. The price of dignity. After her remarks circulated, the very energy around Carol changed entirely. For years, she had been the beautiful, unspoken symbol of middle-class success, entering the old world of privilege. Polite, competent, and quietly proud. But in a few short, frantic days, that very pride began to feel complicated. It wasn't the same warm thing anymore. People started noticing small, almost invisible things. How she was missing from certain photo spreads. How all the reliable palace sources suddenly stayed silent on the matter. How royal watchers endlessly debated whether her words were authorized or not. It was as if the monarchy had simply and politely stepped one pace back, just enough to signal, "We heard you, but we are not joining you." And that, right there, is the brilliant, quiet way the royal system corrects an imbalance through space. It doesn't need confrontation or shouting. It simply freezes warmth. It withdraws the emotional currency. There was even talk, though unverified, that the Prince and Princess of Wales might quietly adjust their living arrangements, spending more precious time at Windsor and less at Bucklebury, which is Carol's home base. If that were true, it wouldn't be punishment. It would just be the monarchy re-establishing a necessary order, rebalancing the emotional geometry of the family. Proximity, as they know so well, always breeds scrutiny. Distance restores a beautiful, necessary calm. To the general public, the whole shift was incredibly subtle. But to anyone who's watched the Windsors long enough, my friends, it was completely textbook. It's the way it always works. A moment of genuine, heart-stopping, near-miss tension came a few days later, when Carol attended a small charity event. Photographers caught her looking perfectly poised, of course, but unusually tense. There was no grand, genuine smile. No eye contact with the cameras. She appeared to know in that instant that her words had traveled much further than she ever intended. And that's the moment I realized the deepest truth. She hadn't actually lost her dignity. She had simply paid for it. You see, in royal life, grace isn't a free gift. It's a thing that must be purchased through consistent, agonizing restraint. Every single public emotion is a coin spent. Carol had spent one, a huge one, and she couldn't get it back. But perhaps that's why people truly sympathized with her. Because, let's be honest, who among us hasn't said something purely out of love and loyalty, only to realize later that love and wisdom don't always share the same clock? The internet kept buzzing, as it always does, for about a week. And then, as always, attention drifted away. A new royal story took the front page. And Carol disappeared again, back into the quiet background where she's always done her most important, crucial work. The system, in its own beautiful cold way, forgave her. Because forgiveness, in royal culture, often looks exactly like absence. No punishment, no public mention, and absolutely no echo. The invisible law of dignity. And that, my dear friends, brings us to the real, quiet meaning of this whole affair. It's not about who said what, or whether Queen Camilla was offended, or whether palace aides frowned slightly. It's about the invisible, utterly necessary law of dignity. In royal life, as in our own daily lives, respect functions like gravity. It's completely invisible, but it is utterly constant. It's what keeps everything from simply floating away into chaos. And when someone, even gently, even for the purest reason of love, steps outside its stable orbit, gravity reminds them, firmly but kindly, where they belong. Carol Middleton's moment wasn't a great scandal. It was a perfect calibration. A mother, shaped by ordinary human instincts, brushed against an extraordinary ancient rule. And the world, for a brief, fleeting time, glimpsed the genuine cost of being human in a system that prizes polished composure above simple, genuine confession. It reminded people that every royal gesture, every silence, every speech, every perfectly composed smile is measured not in honest emotion, but in its flawless form. Words, once they are spoken, instantly belong to everyone else, but restraint that still belongs completely to you. As I watched the story gently fade, I found myself strangely moved, honestly, because I don't actually think Carol truly misstepped. I think she revealed the oldest, truest truth of all, that love always leaks through the armor. It has to. And maybe, just maybe, that's what people needed to see in that vulnerable moment. Not another perfect scandal, but a brief flash of humanity. Some reports still endlessly argue about what she really meant. Some people swear she hinted at deeper, lasting tensions within the hierarchy. Others say she was simply misunderstood by a greedy press. And you know what? Maybe they are all a little bit right. Because the truth, my friends, is rarely tidy or easy to file away. It lives only in the quiet pause between what we meant to say and what the world ultimately chose to hear. So what happens next? Probably nothing dramatic, thank heavens. Life will quietly move on. Kate will continue her crucial, quiet recovery. William will shoulder his duties, and Carol will return to her beloved garden, her grandchildren, and her perfectly peaceful routines. But something fundamental has changed. Not in them, perhaps, but in us. We've all been reminded that even the most graceful lives have these necessary moments of painful collision between feeling and form. And that is the one secret the monarchy has always known, the source of its endurance. Dignity isn't simply silence. It's knowing with absolute certainty when silence finally speaks louder than any word. So, my friends, maybe that's the final lesson this week. Pride fades, humility heals, and truth, when it is spoken gently from a true place, always finds its way home, even when home is inside a marble-walled palace. As always, make sure to read widely, check things for yourself, and remember that headlines never ever hold the whole story. But for now, let's softly close the book on this chapter. A mother's love, a family's delicate balance, and one small human moment that reminded the entire world how absolutely fragile grace can be. Until next time, my dear friends, take care of your own dignity. It's rarer than gold, and it truly shines brightest in your quiet, careful silence.